I'm going to give you a quick tour of how to deploy Dagster using Plural. So the first thing you're going to want to do is navigate to the Cloud Shell page, which will give you our guided onboarding wizard to start up your first cluster. This first screen in the wizard is just the option to create a personalized onboarding session with me. It'll pop up a Calendly link. You can choose a time if you want a completely handheld experience, but if you're feeling confident, you can just get started and we'll take it from there. This gives you the option to use our free demo cloud, which is just a GCP project that will be open for 6 hours or so for you to test out the experience, or you can deploy straight into your own cloud. And there's two options on how to do that. The first is to use our Cloud Shell, which will ask you to provide your cloud credentials and boot up a fully hosted terminal experience with all the Plural CLI and dependencies loaded in. You won't have to install anything. You can do everything in your browser. It's very quick and easy. You can also actually install with the CLI, which is the much more secure and basically enterprise grade way of doing an installation. No cloud credentials need to be given to Plural itself. You can just have it complete security and privacy for your installation. For the demo, we're going to just use the Cloud Shell though, because it's quick and easy. And create a Git repository. It's going to OAuth to GitHub, then ask me to give a name for the repo, and I'm just going to use a pretty obvious name, which is available. Then just choose my cloud account. So we're going to use Google to do this demo, and then give a GCP service account file to do the rest, which I've got to just find in my downloads. There we go. And continue on. We'll give a quick name for the cluster, then a prefix for any buckets that are needed. This is just to dupe GCS buckets or S3 buckets, depending on the cloud you're on, because they're typically globally unique. And then we're going to create a subdomain as well. And then boot up the Cloud Shell. It takes a little bit of time for everything to start running, but once the pod is ready to go in our infrastructure, it will connect and give you the interactive terminal experience. Great. So everything's booted up, and we can start setting up our service. So we're going to select Dagster, and then we're going to add a couple other things that might be needed. So let's just add Airbyte alongside of it for ETL, and then maybe superset for visualization. And then we can just continue on. So give it same name for the VPC, keep moving. The console is already pre-filled for us. Then we'll just give a name for our Dagster host. And I breezed through it, but you can see there's this OIDC toggle that will enable OpenID Connect login for the Dagster installation. For Dagster specifically, that's important because Dagster's open source product has no native authentication attached to it. So the only way you could really host it securely is to use an OpenID proxy or something comparable to it. And we make that completely turnkey for you. That's actually a similar story with Airbyte as well, which you can enable OIDC with Plural. And then Superset has that feature too. So I'm just going to keep filling this out. And then now that everything is good, we're just going to install. And then this is the same process for all applications. It will run Plural build, which just scaffolds out the entire repo with all the Terraform and Helm needed to do the deployment. And then Plural deploy will actually chew on that Terraform and Helm to provision the infrastructure. The first application in this is actually containing the Kubernetes control plane itself. It takes about 15 minutes or so nowadays to provision on Google Cloud. There's really nothing we can do about it. We're completely beholden to the Cloud Zone timing for its ability to provision Kubernetes. But you can just sort of sit and wait, and eventually it will get there. All right, it looks like the deployment is finally finished, and I'll just give you a quick tour to get acquainted with everything you might be seeing here that has changed. So the applications which have a web-facing component actually have launch buttons that allow you to go to their web interfaces. There's also this readiness indicator behind all the launch buttons that'll just give you a hint as to the state of Kubernetes as it gradually converges to deploying these applications. Most of them seem to be ready. Superset's lagging a little bit, and it looks like it's just waiting for this superset worker to finish. You can actually run the plural watch command as well to get a little bit more information about that installation, which we'll do right now. And you can see actually the worker pod is running, so it's probably just that this health check is a little bit lagging. It'll eventually figure itself out. You just sometimes have to give it a bit of a second. But since everything is probably healthy, let's just start looking at some of the stuff we deployed. So we can go to Dagster first and open it up. It's going to do a Plural OIDC handshake, so I'm considering to log into our Dagit instance, and then we can see that there is actually a running Dagster UI, and we can start running quick little Dagster jobs in the UI to test it all working. Yep. So that's Dagster's, demo experience. But yeah, it's a fully working Dagster instance. You can connect a user code deployment directly to it if you wanted to. We'll give a separate tutorial video for how to do that. We also have pretty cool little additional features to enable setting up continuous deployment from your GitHub repository into a Plural deployed Dagster instance as well. Another nice thing is we've kind of deployed a full data stack, so let's look at some of the other applications that are available. So Airbyte also we can log right into, and it's going to ask us for some introductory details just so Airbyte can track all of these people, but I don't really need any security updates. And you can see Airbyte is running and ready to go. And we can also log into that superset instance that we just recently watched get healthy and see everything going on there. So yeah, it's an empty superset instance. And then finally, we also deployed the console, which is the management experience that Plural provides in your own Kubernetes cluster to ensure everything is healthy. And yeah, so you can see all the various apps that are available. We can go to that Dagster app as an example, and we'll have runbooks available to you to scale your Dagster instance or the Postgres database underneath the Dagster instance. You can do things like add replicas, tune CPU requests and limits. You can get logs for all the details of what's going on in your Dagster install. And those logs do come with basic filtering, stuff like that. There's also the ability to do some basic user management. So if you wanted to add a new user to that Dagster install, you very easily can. We have some docs as well to do basic things like deploying on a private network or adding your user code deployment. And then finally, there's the ability to dive into the various Kubernetes components of your Dagster install. So you can look at the daemon and the various containers that is available in it. You can actually see the logs for that specific pod as well. If you needed to, you could delete the pod if it were flapping. And yeah, so you can do effectively everything you need to monitor and operate your Dagster instance here. The other very big, powerful feature that's available, although we haven't created any, we can manually create one, is the ability to receive new upgrades, which is done via the upgrades channel that is created with the running console. And anytime there's a new version of Dagster, for instance, available, the console will pull it down from the catalog and actually manually apply it. And it'll basically automate doing the Plural build and Plural deploy steps that we did on installation in a appropriately serialized, safe, and secure way, ultimately committing back into your Git repo that is being used to store the state of your application. So yeah, that's a quick overview of how to deploy and actually manage Dagster on Plural. I hope if any of you guys are considering deploying Dagster, you consider Plural in the future. But if for whatever reason Dagster isn't a fit, we do have 80 other applications that might be useful for whatever you're doing within your engineering organization. So yeah, I hope you keep us in mind. But otherwise, thanks for tuning in.